What's up, Sooner football fans, and welcome to Quick Slants, a new video offering from the team here at OU Insider, bringing you up to speed on all things Oklahoma athletics, and obviously just 2 weeks away from the beginning of spring football. That is paramount right now. The basketball team for the University of Oklahoma not looking like it's going to make the field of 68 in March Madness, so everybody is pretty laser focused right now on Brent Venables' second season at the University of Oklahoma and all that it's going to bring as we prepare to get a first look at the new look roster when they hit the field on March 22nd. And with that, all of you loyal viewers and subscribers get the opportunity to meet the newest member of our team, Jesse Crittenden, former sports editor at the Norman Transcript, just joined the staff here at OU Insider a couple of weeks ago. Jesse, we, of course, are thrilled to have you. And with that, I turn things over to you for Quick Slants. What is it that you want to focus on today?
Yeah, no, of course. I appreciate that. And just real quickly, I want to say thank you to everybody, all the OU Insider VIP subscribers, all the viewers. The first couple weeks here have been great. And you guys have all been so welcoming and appreciated your feedback and your messages and all those things. So really, I these last couple weeks couldn't have gone better. So I appreciate all of you. Yeah, Parker, I think that's kind of the thing with, especially you mentioned it with the way the men's basketball season has gone this year. The women's team has been great, but the men's basketball team has been a little bit of a struggle. And I think and given that, we had the huge media availability a few weeks ago where we got to meet all 25 mid-year enrollees. I think the excitement for OU football, and yeah, considering it's 2 weeks away from the start of spring ball, I think everyone's just really excited. And I also think there's a lot to look at. And so I think for me, one of the things that really interested me was specifically looking at the linebacker position. There's going to be a lot of spots that I think there's legitimate playing time up for grabs, but I think linebacker is going to be one of them, especially with losing a couple of guys like Deshaun White and David Agwebu. So I think that's really been a position I've been super interested in. And Brent Venables talked about it at his presser. He was asked about it, and he said, I like some of the guys that we're bringing in, but the reality is they can't afford an injury there. There's not a lot of depth, and that's kind of what he said last year too. So I guess, Parker, I was going to ask you first, just maybe did anything surprise you, or did anything interest you about maybe what Brent talked about when it came to the linebacker depth?
It was intriguing to note that there seems to be less confidence on Venables' end regarding the depth at that position than there maybe is in the public eye, because I think as far as the public perception of the linebacker room, the belief is that it's going to be a lot deeper and a lot better than it was in 2022 when you had Deshaun White and Danny Stutzman and David Agwebu all playing north of 80% of the snaps for Oklahoma. There was virtually no depth to be found there. Shane Witter sat out the majority of the season with an injury. Of course, TD Roof did not play at all. Jaron Kanak, his usage was somewhat enigmatic, and one of the things that Brent took some heat among the fan base for. But heading into year two, you've got Dasan McCullough coming in, the transfer from Indiana, freshman All-American. He's expected to be a starter and a stud at Cheetah. And then Danny Stutzman and Jaron Kanak widely expected to be the two guys that are your starters at the inside linebacker position. But beyond that, you have Witter returning from an injury. You have Kobe McKenzie and Kip Lewis, both of whom redshirted last year as true freshmen. Those guys are going to be more physically advanced. McKenzie came in probably a little bit heavier than Oklahoma would have liked him. Lewis came in probably a little bit lighter than Oklahoma would have liked him. So once those two guys have had the opportunity to go through another offseason of Jerry Schmidt's workout regimen, they should be ready to step in and contribute in some capacity. Now, I think I'm really, really excited, and many are, with the class of incoming freshmen at the linebacker position, Jesse, between Samuel Masigo and Lewis Carter, who aren't going to get here until June, and the lone early enrollee at the position, Phil Picciotti, shows up to campus at 6'3", 237 pounds. So you want to talk about college ready, at least from a physical perspective, that's what Phil Picciotti is. So I think the big question is, how quickly do these young guys come along? And that was a big question last year with Kanak, Lewis, and McKenzie. Realistically, Oklahoma's quality depth at linebacker could have been a lot better if the Sooners would have been able to milk good football out of those youngsters early in the process. But Brent Venables decided very on that they weren't ready. I believe he announced to us in September that Lewis and McKinney were going to redshirt and we're not going to play more than their allotted 4 games as true freshmen. So I think it remains to be seen what you're going to get from Omasigo and Carter, both of whom are guys that were top 150 national recruits, regardless of position, are going to have the ability to come in and contribute. But as with really any aspect, any position within Brent Venables' defense, it's less about the physical and more about the mental, more about the cognitive aspect of grasping your role and executing it. And that's going to be a challenge for these young guys.
Yeah, no kidding. And you're exactly right. I like what you said about kind of, I mean, I think in a lot of ways, the linebacker room, I think there's more room to be excited, especially at this time this year compared to last year. And I think what's interesting is yeah, I think you kind of have a wide range of different kind of experience levels there. You mentioned some of the incoming freshmen that I think are highly touted. Now you've got some second year guys on the roster, like you mentioned with Kobe McKenzie and Kip Lewis and Jaron Canick, that that might be able to offer something there. Then yeah, you have guys like Deshaun McCullough, who's obviously he's a transfer, but has experience at that position. And you still have Danny Stutzman, and Brent talked about it, that, and I think Brent's gone to bat for Danny Stutzman a little more than once, just about not only how much he grew during the season, but I mean, if you look at the counting stats, he was a really productive player last year. I think there is still ways he can grow. I think there's ways he can get better, but I think Brent called him probably the most productive player on the defense last year. So I think what's going to be interesting is, especially when you throw the cheetah position into it, I think there are still some spots here in the defense that are kind of up for grabs, and I think it's going to be interesting to see how Brent Venables and his coaching staff, what they lean towards. Do they give some of these younger guys, how much do they give them a chance? These freshmen that are coming in, maybe some of these second year guys that have been in the program once, how much do they get a chance? Is this the year that Jaron Canick gets a little bit of a bigger role on the defense? So I guess I would ask you, out of all those guys you named, is there maybe a name or two among these new guys that are coming in, specifically transfer incoming freshmen? There are a couple of guys in that list that you think might have an impact or have a chance to really make an impact early?
I think despite the fact that he won't be arriving till June, Omasigo is the one guy that I would kind of spotlight. And he was a player that Oklahoma evaluated and began recruiting early in the process before he was a nationally regarded prospect at the linebacker position. But he just continued to gradually rise and rise and rise and rise up the rankings to the point where I believe he was in the mid 700s overall when Venables and the staff first got on him. He was not a guy that was on anybody's blue chip radar. By the end of the recruiting cycle, he's the number 4 linebacker in America. And his combination of speed, athleticism, and physicality, I mean, force at the point of attack when he arrives, that's going to make him a valuable commodity potentially very early for Oklahoma. And I think what really stands out with a guy like that is just how readily he can cover the whole field. He had Power 5 offers to play wide receiver. In fact, at the end of his junior season, I think that's what many figured was going to happen, was he was going to be a Power 5 wide receiver. Well, how can you say no to playing linebacker for Brent Venables? And so I think for Samuel Masigo, he's a guy that if he shows up in June and proves he can grasp it mentally, he's going to be able to step in. And I'm not saying he starts. I think we all have a very clear idea of who the 3 starters are in Deshaun McCullough, Danny Stutzman, and Jaron Canick. But I do think he's going to be able to push to be a member of that second team and be able to spell that starting group and give them a few snaps off, such that you don't get to a point, as you did in so many games in the 2022 season, where your 3 starting linebackers are gassed by the end of the contest. And I think what else excites me about this group, Jesse, is that between McCullough, Stutzman, and Canick, you have 3 guys that don't really have an ostensible ceiling. Last year, yeah, Stutzman was a true sophomore. First year as a starter. The ceiling was always high for him from a physical standpoint, and from a production standpoint, he turned in a phenomenal season, led the Big 12 in tackles. But with the likes of Deshaun White and David Agwebu, they were good players, but they had a ceiling. right? You were only going to get so much out of those two guys. With Kanik and McCullough coming in alongside Stutzman, I think those are three guys that individually, and I'm not saying this happens, but those are three guys that individually have the capacity to compete for national individual awards at the linebacker position.
Yeah, no, I think you're exactly right. And that's a really good way to put it about maybe they're kind of being a ceiling. And I think the reality is, I mean, kind of that fact coupled with it being first year in Brent Venables' system, which I mean, we all know. I mean, it really was, I think, in some ways, kind of a culture shock to go from the previous coaching staff to this one in terms of exactly what the schemes look like, what Brent Venables is looking for out of his defense, particularly out of his linebackers. There were, he said it more than once that he needs linebackers to be the leaders of the defense. That's what he's looking for. And I think there were times last year that position, there was productivity, but you didn't see a whole lot of, I think, maybe leaders or a lot of organization or a guy, guys that are in the middle of that defense, making sure everybody is where they need to be. So I think that's a really good point. And I think the other thing too is, we've now got, OU's now got an incoming freshman class that this is truly, a lot of these guys are guys that Brent Venables recruited, and their first year is going to be, they haven't been under any other system. They haven't been to any other college. They haven't worked under any other defensive coordinators. They are coming in their first year under Brent Venables, and I think that makes a difference in terms of getting adjusted and learning different things. And but the other thing I was going to mention, you kind of touched on it. I think we are going to see more of a value on getting different guys slotted in onto the field. I mean, and again, Brent has talked about it. There were I think in particular, David Ugwoegbu and Danny Stutzman spent too much time on the field last year. And I think particularly in conference play at the end of games, you saw the downsides of that. And it's the reason why OU was, I think one of the reasons why OU was so bad in close games last year. If you turn the tide on even a couple of those games last year, it's kind of a different season, a different outlook on the season. So I guess turning it back to you for real quick, you kind of touched on it, but how surprised would you be to see maybe 3 or 4 or maybe even 5 other guys off the bench maybe get some time on the field, at least early in the season?
Yeah, not surprised at all, at least when you're talking about early in the season. Now, the latter half of the season, you may get to the point where McCullough and Stutzman and Kanik are playing so well that if you're Brent Venables and that Oklahoma defensive staff, maybe you don't want to take those guys off the field. But I also think that playing 85% of the snaps in 2023 may not be as physically demanding as playing 85% of the snaps in 2022, because we also expect Oklahoma to have more game control in 2023. We expect that they're going to be able to run the ball more effectively, manage the pace of play, and win the time of possession battle, with Javonte Barnes and Gavin Sawchuk being two guys that are poised to take a leap out of the backfield and be the next two-headed monster at the running back position for Oklahoma. And one final note on the linebacker room, I'm just going to throw this out there. Would not be shocked if you see Marcus Stripling join that contingent as well. The fifth-year senior has been playing edge rusher for really the entirety of his career as a Sooner, but just there's not a lane for him to garner as much playing time there, given the presence of guys like R. Mason Thomas, Jonah Laulu, Trace Ford, Rondell Bothroyd, PJ Adebawore, and of course, Taylor Wine coming to campus in June. So Marcus Stripling may be a guy that bounces up to linebacker before it's all said and done as well. That's going to do it for Quick Slants here on the OU Insider 24/7 Sports YouTube channel. Let us know in the comments what topic you want us to hit next. We're going to be bringing this offering to you several times a week as we get rolling here with spring football. For Jesse Crittenden, I am Parker Thune. Again, let us know. Is there a position group? Is there a player? Is there a situation regarding this Oklahoma football team that you want us to talk about in the next video? We'll see you then.